Good morning, everybody. Good morning, friends. Good morning to you out there, wherever you are watching from this morning. I'm Pastor James. I work here. I talk about God a lot. That's what I do. I do other things, but this is my favorite thing to do. And this morning, I am tying up good questions. I may or may not have told you that we were out of good questions. We're actually not. I got one more. I got to hit it up today. I can't get away from it. And I have to ask you, have you ever had a moment that I call, I can't believe that was me moment? You know, like you have an idea about who you are or who you should be anyway, and then you do something or you say something. I mean, it just like, it just comes right out in a moment, and you look back and you go, oh my gosh, the hands come up and everything. You're like, I cannot believe that why did I do that? What's wrong with me? What is wrong with me? That's not me. I mean, that's not the me that I'm supposed to be. What is wrong with me? That's the question I want to tackle this morning. And I'm going to take you down the rabbit hole. Anybody ever seen The Matrix? You know that old movie? It's just wicked old now, but it was cool when I was cool. And the whole thing, I'm not recommending that you watch it. I'm just saying that it was cool when I was cool. And it starts out, and this guy is trying to figure out the truth about everything. He's very confused, and this guy offers him like a red pill and a blue pill. And you take the one if you want to know the truth. But once you're down the rabbit hole, there's no coming back. So that's what I'm presenting to you this morning. I'm going to take you down a rabbit hole of what's wrong with you. If you don't actually want to know what's wrong with you, you should probably just get up and leave or plug your ears or, I don't know what you do. Put your headphones in or something. Okay, there's no coming back from this. There's none. And I want to take you to a place that gets to the bottom of what's wrong with you. And it's funny because most people go by this thing, don't read this thing at all, or don't know what to do with this thing. They just figure this is totally irrelevant, or this is for kids, like tricks, or whatever. And it's in Genesis. It's in Genesis chapter 1. I'm coming back there, believe it or not. And I'm going to take you down the rabbit hole of what's wrong with you, because that's actually what the author of Genesis does, even though most people miss it. We're going to Genesis 1:26, I believe. There it is. This is the beginning. Get it? The beginning. This is a part of the creation account, and this is God talking about what he's doing. And he says this, let us make man in our own image, in our likeness, and let them rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air, over all the livestock, over all the earth, and over all the creatures that move along on the ground. Basically, I'm going to make a man, and he's going to be kind of like me in his world that I'm creating for him. He's going to be in charge of it. He's going to have creative freedom. He's going to be able to do stuff and try stuff, and it's going to be awesome. But here's something people miss, okay? Keep going. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. It's not just a guy thing, it's a everybody thing, right? Here's the part that people miss. And this sounds nerdy. I know it sounds nerdy, but you got to see this little thing, okay? Next slide. You see, when they say in his image, this is actually what the real word meant. When they first, took this thing down and translated it, it was idol. It says, so God created man as his idol. As his idol, he created them. Male and female, he created them. What does that mean? Now, if you're a Christian, you come from a church background, you have been taught since day one that idols equal what? Bad. Idols equals bad. Idols always bad. In fact, whenever the people of faith get in trouble, it's always because of what? Idols. They start worshiping idols. I don't know why they do that. Why do they do that? But they do that, and they do it over and over and over again. It's like they have no ability to learn whatsoever. They always come back to the idols. So, they're always getting in trouble for idols, and we always assume idols always equals terrible, terrible, terrible. Well, it's sort of true. But what I want you to understand is what an idol is and what God means by what he says here. See, an idol is really just a crude representation of something bigger. You have a little object, right? A little bronze statue or something. It's got 8 wings and legs and things or something, The idea is this little thing is a representation, a very tiny, powerless perhaps, but tiny little representation of the bigger thing that is the real thing. You following me? And God creates this creation, and then at the end of it, at the last, he puts a human being down in front of it and says, this is my idol in the world. This is the thing, a person, that you will look at and others will look at and see a rendering of something greater behind it all. Me. From the get-go, man was actually supposed to be the very glorification of God himself, the crowning achievement of the entire creation, a person. And from the get-go, a person's source of identity was meant to be looking at himself and looking around and looking at the creation and looking at his place in the creation, and he would be reminded, something amazing created me. I know who I am. I know I must be important. I know I must have value. Because look, if I'm just the idol, if I'm just the glorification, the representative, the metaphor for who God is, then God must be amazing, and therefore I must be pretty important. That was the message that man was created with. You should know, you should have a contentment about who you are because of why? Because of who made you. Because of how valued you were. That you were the icing on the cake, believe it or not. You were the crowning achievement of God's creation. That should tell you something. That should tell you, I'm important. And that is important because every person actually is made with a desperate need for identity. Believe it or not, whether you'd admit it or not, you actually have a desperate need to know for sure whether or not you are valuable, whether your life means something or not, whether or not it would matter to someone if you disappeared. It is important. You have to know that. And you'll never get around needing to know that. In the absence of knowing that for sure, you will track down and chase every possible other source of identity that you can get your hands on because you have to have one. If you don't listen to me just because I'm a preacher and you think I'm weird because I'm a preacher and I must not have any basis in real fact or something like that, that's fine. You know what? Go to people who study psychology, purely just study psychology. They will tell you the same thing. It's observable. If your concept of your identity, of your worth is poor or low, or you're not even sure where it should come from, you're going to have trouble in your life. A lot of it. And on the flip side, if you take someone who has a strong sense of identity, a strong sense of worth, isn't tripped up and tempted to think they're worthless or they're useless or they're not wanted, and if you've got somebody like that, they're going to do well. They're going to have it together. They're going to be okay. They're going to get through some things. And what I believe that the Scripture tells us in this little passage, most people miss, but what I believe it tells us is that your identity is a huge, huge part of who you are. And if it isn't right, you're going to have trouble. You're going to get tripped up. And actually, if you follow the account along, that's actually what happens. That is the weak spot in mankind. If you would, please, next slide. This is This is just a little background, but follow with me, we're going somewhere. It writes, "The Lord God made all kinds of trees grow out of the ground, trees that were pleasing to the eye and good for food. In the middle of the garden were the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of all things good and evil." Just hold on for a second, okay? Could you see that maybe we're not just talking about apples? I mean, maybe it's an apple, but there's something bigger here than just, there's an apple, and you're supposed to eat it or not eat it. Can you see that for a moment? This is not an ordinary Macintosh. That's what I'm trying to say. The tree of life, okay, that sounds like something pretty big. You know, the tree of the knowledge of all things good and evil, whatever that means, is pretty big. Something huge is in there, wrapped up in that. And what I want you to just see is this last piece, this tree of the knowledge of all things good and evil. I want you to imagine for a moment what's being said here. When these guys wrote this thing down, there was an understanding of certain words that the knowledge of something meant to experience it for yourself, to get that knowledge. It wasn't just somebody told you something, now I know about that thing. It was an experiential knowledge. How did you get knowledge of that person? Okay, you spent time with them. You went in there, you did that thing, and you gained that knowledge of it. And so he's talking about this tree that has, quote unquote, the knowledge of all things good and evil. That means all things, from the most horrific thing that you can think of to the very holiest, bestest thing that you can think of. All things, everything that there is to experience, from terrible to great. And for whatever reason, God has plunked down this tree in the middle of this creation and said, you know, here, if you eat from this, if you get the fruit from this, you will attempt to experience everything that there is to experience for yourself. Decide whether it's good or bad. Sounds like a cool apple. Maybe I'd like to eat it. Honestly, it really doesn't matter whether you believe it's a literal apple or a metaphorical apple. It really does not matter to me. Okay, and I know some of you are like, oh, yes, it does. Well, just chill out. Just chill out. Okay, just follow with me the meaning of it, because that's what's important right now. And the scripture goes on to say, "Then the Lord took the man and placed him in the Garden of Eden to cultivate and keep it. And the Lord commanded him, 'You may eat freely from any tree in the garden, but you must not eat from the tree of the knowledge of all things good and evil, for in the day you eat of it, you will surely die.'" Certainly, you will die that day. In other words, I've created this awesome, amazing creation, and you have freedom to just do stuff. I mean, you get to just kind of sit on top of this thing and be in charge of it. I did all the heavy lifting. You can enjoy it. You can enjoy everything there is to enjoy. Go after it. Have a ball. Here's the one thing I don't want you to do. I do not want you to eat from the tree. I do not want you to try and experience everything that there is from evil to good on your own and come to your own conclusions about it. That day, there's going to be trouble. In fact, later on, Eve mentions they were told they shouldn't even touch it. Not just don't even eat it, don't go anywhere near it. Don't go anywhere near it. God is saying, I want you to trust me. I do not want you to learn about all of life by experimentation. I want you to trust me. Trust me. Take my word for it. If I say it's good, it's good. If I say it's bad, don't run off and say, well, I'm not sure if it's really bad. I'm going to try it out for myself first, and then I'll know. Don't do that, he says. Do not do that. That day, there will be trouble. There will be a divide. That will be the beginning of your ending when you go down that path. And of course, what happens? I mean, do you know the story? You know the story? Next slide, please. Oh, the serpent. Oh, that serpent. We're told that now the serpent was more crafty than any of the wild animals God had made. He said to the woman, "Did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden?" That's very clever, by the way. Isn't that kind of clever? Did he really say you can eat from any tree? That's ridiculous. He just said the one. Well, okay, still not good, right? The woman said, "We may eat from the trees in the garden, but God did say you must not eat from the tree in the middle of the garden, and you must not touch it, or you will die." Oh, he's crafty. He's crafty. Why? I mean, don't you want to know why? Everybody wants to know why. Next slide. "You certainly will not die," the serpent said to the woman. "For God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing all things good and evil for yourself." Now, it's interesting. He doesn't say, you know what, it's really not good to just be an idol of God in this creation and reflect who God is. It's fine. It's not a bad thing necessarily. It doesn't talk anything about how you should be discontent with being a child of God. I mean, he doesn't even get into that. It's not worth his trouble. But this is what he does say. He says, look, he's just telling you that because there's another level up that you could go. There's more that you could have. Don't you want more? Don't you want more? Yeah, it's fine. Fine to just be in this creation, enjoy the trees and see the animals and eat good food all the time without having to do very much work. Actually, that sounds pretty good to me. Actually, it sounds pretty good. I don't mind that. Isn't that what a cruise is? I want to go on a cruise soon, right? But as soon as this human gets the idea in their mind that maybe there's another greater identity that they could have, where they have more power and more understanding of everything and more independence and less reliance upon this creator that they started out with, they get the idea there's more, and then they just can't be content anymore. And that's the same with every person you know. As soon as you understand there's something more that you could have that would be more fulfilling yet, it's like you can never be content again, can you? There's something more exciting. Is there? Well, why shouldn't I have it? Why shouldn't I try it? Why shouldn't I see if I can get it? There's something, more free that you could have, where you could just, do this and do this, where right now you're not doing any of those things. Well, maybe I might like to try those things. What if it's more fulfilling than what I have now? What's the risk? And of course, people take it, right? Yes, they do. The serpent's message to a person is, yeah, your identity's fine. That's cool. You're a child of God. But you could have more. And it's possible that if you just stay in this zone where you're in, just trying to reflect who God is, his character, his generosity, his mercy, his love for one another, if you stay there, you're missing out on something that you could have that's more, that's better, a greater identity, a greater source of worth that you could have, a greater source of value. Yeah, you'll be a child of God, but you'll be a child of God and you'll be successful. And won't that feel good? You could be a child of God, yes, but what if you could be a child of God and have an exciting romance every day of your life, all the time, 24/7? Wouldn't that be better? Yeah. Why not? And so people begin in a moment's time sometimes to just form an identity that they want to strive for. Yes, I want to be a good guy, but I want to be a good guy and I want to have this. I want to be a good girl, but I want to have this. I want more. And they create an identity which they begin to form their life around, and begin to form their life around protecting it, and form their life around taking risks to attain it. Can you hear me? Some blank expressions out there. Maybe worried. Where am I going to go with this? Well, I'm going to go right to you. That's you and me to a T. That's you and me to a T. I wonder, if I follow Jesus in this thing, will I be missing out on something greater that I could have? And it's amazing. You can be the most, secular-minded, worldly person, no interest in things of faith or religion or whatsoever. You can be that all the way up to the most experienced, committed Christian that ever was. And every day you'll face that same temptation over and over and over again. Couldn't I have more? What if I could get more? And if you allow that question to be answered, yes, I'm telling you, slowly but surely, you will begin to create a life that is built more and more and more around attaining that identity that you have created. And here's the tricky part. They're not all bad things in and of themselves. They're not. In fact, many of the things that you might chase are actually good things. You want to be a great mom, don't you, moms? Right? Who doesn't want to be a great mom if you're a mom? Even if you're not even trying, you would admit, I would like to be a great mom. I would like people to think that about me. If you're, guys, I would like people to think that I am responsible, that I am respectable, that I am worth paying attention to when I say something. I would like to be very successful. Success is not bad. Success is not bad. Victories are not bad. Being a great mom or great dad, not bad. The problem, though, becomes when you take an identity that you picture and you elevate it to a place that is ahead of God. And you begin to trust that new identity with something that actually God wanted you to trust Him with. Would you be content with knowing that you're becoming a reflection of God more and more every day? Would you be content with that? Or do you need to elevate something above that? And what happens when you do that? Of course, you take risks that you wouldn't take. You violate certain things at certain times that you might not have otherwise, because you've unwittingly begin to elevate that new identity above and beyond. Maybe you're a great mechanic. I love to pick on the mechanics because I know one now. It becomes harder and harder to tell as time goes on that you've actually built your identity around being the best mechanic. It becomes harder and harder to see that you have begun to build your identity around being the best mom, the best dad, extremely generous person, all kinds of things, the best helicopter mechanic. It doesn't really matter what it is. It can be hard to see. But as soon as you do, you have started to capture the essence of sin. Because sin, get this, is not that you do a naughty thing. Told you not to do that, you did it anyway. That's sin. That's sin if you're in kindergarten. Sin for adults is believing there's a better identity than the one that God gave you. Again, next. Sin is believing something is more trustworthy with your identity than God is. That's what got him in the trouble. There's more? Well, God didn't tell me I could have more. Maybe He's just hiding it from me. Maybe he just doesn't want me to experience all the fun that he gets to experience. Maybe he likes to kind of be on top that way all the time and just kind of keeps us down. Maybe he's holding us back because it makes him feel more powerful. I don't know. You know what? You may not be able to answer that question, but I'm telling you, you can if you've ever been a teenager. Because why? Because you do the same thing. Every human person does the same thing coming up. Somebody told me not to do something. I'm not so sure I trust them. They could be holding me back from my best life. They could be keeping me from more. So what do? You don't listen to anybody. Come on, you don't listen to anybody. What are you going to do? You think of something that you'd like to do, somebody that you'd like to be, and then you go out and try to be it. And you say, you know what? If it doesn't go well, I just won't tell anybody. And if it goes great, I'll come back and flash it in their face. Whoa, having a good time. See ya, rentals, come on. That's what you would do. That's what we do. That's what I did. My dad gave me like 3 things when I was a kid. Don't do this. Don't do this. When you go to college, do this. I did the inverse of all of those things. As soon as I got there, yep, I'm going to try that. I'm going to try that. In fact, I wasn't even thinking about doing some of those things till he told me not to. Some kind of weird reverse psychology. I don't know. As soon as I was aware that there was something that I was being held back from, I thought to myself, well, what if there's more I could have? And I'm not experiencing it. I'm telling you, you just can't be content until you find out the answer. It's what we do. But the problem, you know, is that when you trust something powerless as the source of your identity, when you trust something temporary as the source of your identity, you're constantly under threat. You're constantly under threat. There are people who knowingly or unknowingly build their identities around being a desirable person. You know what I'm talking about? I just want to be desired. I want to feel like people would like to be me or be like me or like the look of me, and I want that. I feel like if I had that, I would have more, right? And so people do it, and somewhat successfully. But you watch it. Watch it in celebrities. Watch it in your friends. What happens? You can't stay beautiful forever. You could stay beautiful, but the problem is you get a little bit less beautiful all the time. Not like you were before. I'm sorry to say this is a shocking truth. I'm sorry, but this is true. You cannot stay as beautiful as you are until the end. It's true. It's true. And I had to come to this conclusion on my own. It was very difficult to reckon. Okay, but I did it. That's a joke. Laugh. All right. If you're somebody who has slowly but surely built your identity around being the best at something, sorry to pop your bubble, you will not always be the best at that something. Here's what's going to happen. You will get old. Your skills will become outdated eventually. Your prowess will become a little hazier and a little hazier over time. You just can't hang on to it. And if you've built your source of worth around being the best at something, guess what? As that thing wanes and as that thing diminishes and diminishes and diminishes, you're going to have a crisis. You're going to have what they call an identity crisis. Have you noticed? Everyone is having them. And when do they have them? They have them when they're like my age. Because you get your 20s, and I'm going to teach you more. Young people, just pay attention right now. If you don't listen to anything else, this is how it works. Okay, in your teens, you have some ideas about things, and you should, and then you get into your 20s, and you really start to learn about some things. And here's the thing. You're not really any good until you get to be like 30. Okay, I'm sorry. You're kind of good now, but you won't get to the place of confidence where you're like, I can just do this. I can do this anywhere I go. I can rock this thing. You don't get there till you're about in your 30s, and then you're slowly, the thing is ticking up, and you're getting towards 40, and then you realize, oh no. You mean being awesome at this doesn't last forever? And then you start to spaz out. You start to freak out, and then you got to go buy a convertible, and you got to say, well, I'm still hanging on to my youth, it's got to be red, it's got to be shiny, it's got to be hot and fast. Then you got to redo your whole wardrobe. You know what? This is how 20-year-olds are dressing. I need to look more like a 20-year-old. If I look more like a 20-year-old, I'll feel more like a 20-year-old. And then it boosts my confidence. And yeah, it may work for a while. But when you put your identity in temporary things, anytime the temporary thing gets threatened, you have a crisis. Anytime it looks like you might never make it to the thing that you've envisioned for yourself, you get into a crisis. Anytime it looks like you might just never, ever, ever get anywhere close, you have a crisis. You get depressed. You go into a tailspin. Why? Because you've put the most important thing of your life, the source of your identity, in something that is perishable. And in a perishing world, every day it takes you to a place and reminds you, I can't last. You really can't hang on to me. In fact, you never know when you might lose me. And as you may have noticed, many, many people, you might be one of them, suffer terribly when a source of identity is threatened. You've seen people get mean. I got a little quote I want to share with you, if I can pull it up. It's just in my paper here. I'll read it to you. Actually, it's down here. This is somebody named Jonathan Edwards. You ever heard of him? Maybe not. He says, human society is deeply fragmented when anything but God is our highest love. I'm here to tell you that if anything but God is your highest love, it won't just be society that's fragmented. It'll be you. You will be fragmented. Because the source of your identity is perishable. It's perishable. I'm going to have my team come on up here. Would you guys come up? I want you to think for yourself. Not just what I say, but think for yourself. What are the things that you pride yourself in? What are the things that you've spent a lot of time, a lot of personal investment in? The things that get your focus, your attention. Maybe it's being a great something or other. Maybe it's being the least something or other. Maybe it's being the only somebody or other, like you, or maybe it's being very, very independent. You don't need anybody. Maybe you're financially free. Actually, that's all these things are good things in and of themselves, but only if they're submitted underneath your identity in Christ. Only if they flow out of your identity in Christ. Only if they flow out of your understanding of your worth because of not what you can do, but because of what someone has done for you. It was that way in the beginning in Genesis. And it stayed that way in Jesus when Jesus came. The source of your identity is going to be fragmented if it's anything except the one who made you. I have seen, and you have seen, some people freak right out when something that they wrapped their identity up in gets threatened. I know you've seen it. I know you've seen it. Try having a conversation with somebody at work that's been doing the same thing for 35 years and say, you know what, I actually think we should maybe look for somebody else to do what you do. And then run. Right? That's what you do. You run away. Run away. You may have your identity somewhat built up around, being an awesome singer. We've got some awesome singers anymore. What happens on the day that somebody comes to you and says, you know what, there's certain notes in this song that we just have to hit, And I notice you're really struggling to hit those notes. What do you do? Is that going to ruin you? Is it going to ruin me someday when somebody comes and says, Pastor James, we have so appreciated all of the messages that you have put together over the years. I mean, just what a sacrificial guy. What a testimony. I love all those words, right? What a testimony. Your work is bad. But we would really like to see some other voices hit the pulpit, and just, fresher, younger people, am I going to die that day? Well, I'm not supposed to. I'm not supposed to. Because that's not who I am. It's just a thing that I do. It's a thing that I do out of who I am. And someday, the who that made this who I am is maybe going to change it up on me and say, you know what, I'd like you to do this thing over here or this thing over here. And you know what? I'm going to have to learn to say, okay, I'm good to go. So are you. You won't be the best mom forever. You know why? Believe this or not, children grow up. They do. Some of them even leave the house. I've heard. It happens. And you can't go to that for your source of worth after a point. Dudes in the room, someday you're not going to be able to do what you do the way that you do it anymore. Either because it's not needed anymore, or because it has to be done differently, or because somebody wants to do it differently. And that's going to bother you. It's going to gnaw at you. Some of you have ministries that you do, and someday somebody's going to point out that your ministry is no longer effective doing it the way that you do it. That's going to be rough. If your source of identity is not in the who, and it's in the what. So the question this morning, I'm just going to leave you with a question this morning, and then I'm going to have these guys sing a song for us, and you can join in. The question is, who do you trust with your worth? Who do you trust? Will you trust God with your source of worth? Or you trust a thing? A picture? A vision in your head of something more or better somehow? Which will it be? Which will it be? Is it the Jesus who would do absolutely anything to bring you into the kingdom? Or would it be just something else? And go ahead, guys.